Katie and I are done for the day, but you're not.
I wish I could say that, but live, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be hosting a special. You see it right there, the Mueller Report. Among our live guests will be Republican Congressman Devin Nunes, who helped start all of this uncovering of the dossier and other matters ago. Big lineup of guests, and we'll be back tomorrow morning.
Best of luck. Maybe we'll get some more information about what's actually in the report today. So
I have a feeling there'll be plenty of stuff today.
We may even call on Pete. Maybe we'll get him back to work.
Hey, we got basketball tomorrow. Still March Madness.
March Madness.
Taking on Ed Henry tomorrow.
Harlem
Have a great
Globetrotters tomorrow.
Waiting on Barr. We are live at the Justice Department in Washington, where the Attorney General Bill Barr is expected to be making a decision maybe shortly on the report's release. We're also live in West Palm Beach, Florida, near Mar-a-Lago, where the president and his team of lawyers are waiting for the exact same details. And we're live on Capitol Hill and the 2020 campaign trail, where Democrats are demanding the report's immediate and full release. Leading Democrats expected to have a 3 p.m. conference call to address this and so much more. Welcome, everybody. Happy weekend. I'm Neil Cavuto. So much we do not know. Here is what we do. After nearly 2 years, the Russia probe is now over, and there are no new indictments. Now, is that a good sign for the president? We'll be speaking with former Whitewater independent counsel Ken Starr, who will be joining us in a moment and likes to warn folks, do not jump to early conclusions. First, now to Peter Doocy on Capitol Hill with the very latest from there. Hey, Peter.
Neil, we finally got our first official congressional action since the Mueller report dropped, that 3 p.m. conference call where Democrats are all going to dial in and hear from relevant committee chairs about what the next steps are, specifically when it comes to messaging, but also just in terms of interpreting what might come from the Justice Department. As for everybody else, lawmakers are on standby, because as soon as the Attorney General Barr is done leafing through the Mueller report, he said that he might be ready to quickly provide lawmakers with a summary. But some Democrats are already saying that is not good enough for them. They do not just want a summary. They want to see all of the evidence that Mueller used to draw a conclusion. And if they don't get it, then they're ready to subpoena the special counsel and make the man who has been silent for years testify.
If it is not made public in its entirety, we will we'll use a compulsory process. We'll subpoena the report, and if necessary, we reserve the right to call Mueller before the committee, or maybe even Barr before the committee.
Now that the report is done, Democrats also say they're worried the Attorney General might try to give the Trump team a sneak peek, but Republicans can't believe their ears, because this investigation has been leak-free from start to finish, and they don't know why that would change now.
With many Democrats right now in this Pelosi majority, they want impeachment as the end result, regardless of the facts. That's the opposite of the direction you're supposed to go. If, again, this report comes out and says there are no new indictments and there is no collusion, they ought to drop this hoax.
We only know of 2 people in the United States that have a hard copy of the Mueller report right now: the Attorney General Barr and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. But lawmakers have been told that might change soon, this weekend. Neil.
All right, Peter, thank you very, very much. Now, we're also awaiting reaction from no less than the President of the United States as the Mueller probe comes to an end. Garrett Tenney in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the president is spending this weekend. Hey, Garrett.
Neil, good morning to you. Yeah, President Trump has been very uncharacteristically silent on Twitter so far since this news came out. He is up and about this morning, though. This past hour, he arrived over at Trump International Golf Club, and it's a beautiful day here in Palm Beach, so he's probably taking in the golf course a bit while he's over there. But last night, a source close to the president says he was in a good mood after this news came out. And we're also told that both he and his legal team are cautiously optimistic. And one reason for that is because of the Justice Department saying that Mueller has not recommended any other charges from his investigation. And in a statement, the president's outside attorney, Rudy Giuliani, told Fox News, "This marks the end of the Russia investigation. We await a disclosure of the facts. We are confident that there is no finding of collusion by the president, and this underscores what the president has been saying from the beginning, that he did nothing wrong." Well, like the rest of us, the White House, the president, and his legal team are now awaiting the details of what exactly is in the Mueller report. And last night, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tweeted out, "The next steps are up to Attorney General Barr, and we look forward to the process taking its course. The White House has not received or been briefed on the special counsel's report." And one of the big questions going forward is how involved the White House will be in the summary of Mueller's report that the Attorney General will be sending to Congress, if they will get involved at all, as well as how involved they will be in the details of what is and is not released from the further investigation, not just the summary, both to Congress and then to the public as well, what all of us will ultimately see, Neil.
All right, Garrett, thank you very much. Garrett Tenney with the president in Florida. In the meantime, no indictments, as you've heard, handed over with this report. So what does that mean? Is it a good sign for the president? Let's ask former Whitewater independent counsel and author of Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation, Ken Starr. Ken, very good to have you. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thank you, Neil.
You know, back in 1998, you had about a 445-page report. We're told that this one was very voluminous. They didn't give a page count to it, but I'm betting it was more pages than yours. I don't know. Does that mean anything?
Yeah, it really doesn't mean anything because, by the way, Bill Barr, who has this report, is going by the books. When you read his letter transmittal to Congress and then he made it public, Neil, there are 4 different references to the regulations under which Bob Mueller has been operating. So everybody needs to remember Bill Barr is a lawyer, and he looks at the law. Everybody says, well, we want complete transparency. He's got discretion to do that. But thus far, he's a go-by-the-books guy, and what he said is principal conclusions. He's going to share those, and then he's going to consult separately with both Rod Rosenstein and then with Bob Mueller to see what other information. Actually, Bill Barr is doing it exactly right.
All right, so the fact that there are no additional indictments, many have read into that, well, the great line, it's a nothing burger. I always found that to be a weird phrase because even with nothing on it, the burger is compelling. But having said that, what do you make of that and that means that there's nothing new here, anything that the president need to worry about here? What do you think?
Right, and of course we don't know, but as you and I have discussed this before, there have been contraindications all the way through that there was no collusion. Now, what the country was led to understand is there's a serious question, was there collusion between the Trump campaign and Russian interests? And so now we have at least no indictments, right? We'll see was there information and the like. But there's one really key thing that it seems to me people should feel very good about. They should. Whether they will or not is their business. One, no indictable offenses with respect to any alleged collusion. But secondly, this investigation was allowed to run. There was no interference. That's one of the key things that Bill Barr made clear. So throughout the tenure, remember all the furor about Matt Whitaker as the acting attorney general. Oh, he's going to put a damper on. None of that came true. So the process has been run with integrity, which is what the American people should hope for, and frankly, they should expect.
But was there a leak of the no indictment news, no additional indictments? Was that a leak?
Well, it may be, but we don't know where that came from. Right. But the no indictments, to me, that's a natural inference, Neil, just to be drawn from the fact that Bob Mueller says, I'm through. Now, anything can happen, right? That is something that have been referred back to the Justice Department that didn't require the extraordinary service of a special counsel. But again, this is one of those wait and see moments. But I think it is a time for the nation. I'm leaving politics aside. Others can talk about that. The nation to be thankful that there was no evidence that we know of collusion, which I think has been the case all the way along. No public evidence of collusion. And secondly, that this process has been run with integrity. And so we should all just say, thank goodness, this is a rule of law country as opposed to a Vladimir Putin Russia or a Maduro Venezuela.
You know what's interesting, too? About 37 indictments and or guilty pleas over the span of 2 years. When all was said and done, most of those were on lying or misrepresenting yourself, whether it's Michael Flynn or Paul Manafort or Roger Stone. But a lot of lawyers have pointed out to me, Ken, that no one was charged with directly conspiring with the Russians to help Donald Trump get elected president. And the indictments did not accuse any Americans of conspiring with Russia, period. So what are we to make of that?
Thank you. We're to make of it that the suggestion that there was collusion was, from everything that we've seen, utterly unmeritorious. It just was without foundation. So let's say close the chapter on that. Let's deal with Russia. The real threat is not was there collusion. There wasn't. No public evidence of any collusion whatsoever. But the Russian interests are indeed a threat, as we've seen in the two indictments. And I've praised those indictments before that Bob Mueller's team returned against the Russian individuals and the Russian organizations. They're thugs. They're trying to interfere with our elections. Let's bring them to justice and say, Bob Mueller, good job. Adios.
Well, we tried to bring these dozen or so Russian nationals to justice. Of course, Russia isn't going to hand them over to us, so we're make much progress there. But I'm curious about, maybe this is the pro forma part of it that you can educate me on. When you released your report on Bill Clinton, did you have any recommendations that would go to the House and say, all right, this is something you can seize on, the lying about Monica Lewinsky stuff or whatever? Or did you just lay it out there and then they would seize on what they thought to be an impeachable or high crime and misdemeanor offense?
Yeah, well, we said don't release it. We said this report, which was released without having been reviewed, it has very sensitive material in it. So my transmittal letter could not be clearer. Watch out. And I think everyone knew the nature of the investigation was such into perjury and obstruction of justice, but given the background, that it was likely to contain details that you wanted to be cautious about. You wanted to be prudent about it. But the House of Representatives voted. They're the people's house. Everybody loves transparency, so boom, it just goes out. But no, I was very chagrined by that, and I was frankly surprised because Congress does, in fact, deal in a very professional way with sensitive material all the time.
But they seized on that and felt that, if you lie under oath, that's an impeachable offense. It might be, people have different ways of interpreting already lied, understandably, about an affair. But be that as it may, they seized on that to begin impeachment operations. So I'm wondering here, those who have jumped to conclusions or thought that the Democrats might not be able to fess something out of this, how does that process go?
Yeah, well, the process they'll be looking, the political opponents will look for anything to hammer the president with. So that's one of the reasons for the call of transparency, the 3 o'clock call. Right. What are we going to do now? Bob Mueller has, I guess, let us down or whatever because he did not conclude the feverish suggestions were that there was collusion, which I viewed as fanciful, certainly unlikely to begin with. So they're going to be trying to find anything that they possibly can. But again, my point is, and by the way, I've got to correct one thing. What the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, was guilty of was included obstruction of justice, and that's why he was found in contempt by Susan Weber Wright. One of the things that is so different about this deal is we've had the President continually attacking the investigation, but not interfering with it. Bill Clinton was subtle. He let others, surrogates, James Carville, right, Sidney Blumenthal, attack the investigation incessantly and to put private investigators on our private lives. The Clinton White House played for keeps. It looks as if Donald Trump's bark is a lot worse than his bite.
Do you think Donald Trump has asked for a copy of this report, and is that legal for Bill Barr to give it to him?
I doubt that he's asked. I'm sure his lawyers have said we would like to see it. Bill Barr is so prudent that I think he will provide the president's lawyers only, if anything, with that which they need to know that might affect national security.
Ken Starr,
if anything.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You bet, Neil.
Ken Starr, the former Whitewater Independent Counsel. By the way, this is going to be political hay for Democrats crisscrossing the country today, including Beto O'Rourke. I believe he's in South Carolina. He has joined many of the other Democrats who say, get that report out. The light of day, the sooner the better. More for this.
Ameriprise wants to know what's important.
Was threatening to subpoena Robert Mueller as he wraps up the Russia probing investigation. Keep in mind that Bill Barr, the Attorney General, has already promised that he will certainly get out key details of that report, maybe the entire report. It's too early to tell. Obviously, certain names have to be redacted and all of that sort of stuff. That's a very voluminous and timely process. John Summers is a former communications director for the former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. John, isn't that jumping the gun to already be talking like that before, obviously Barr has had a chance to fully read the report, weigh the report, talk to Rosenstein and obviously Bob Mueller about the report?
Yeah, Neil, I think everyone needs to slow their roll on this one, right? I mean, it's too soon to start calling, for subpoenas of Mueller and anyone on his team. It's also too early for Republicans and the Trump administration to declare victory because we just don't know what's in that report. So I think everyone needs to take a breath, give Attorney General Barr some time to take a look at the report, digest it himself, and then come up with, with what the next steps ought to be. And obviously, one of those next steps needs to be a way to make that report public, which I know some people are saying the Democrats are calling for, but the reality is that people on in both parties are calling for the release of the report. House voted unanimously last week to do that, and nearly 90% of the American public wants that as well.
Apparently, there's a lot of legalese here where you can't release everything. I mean, names and those who were originally tipping investigators in the early going. How is that process even done?
Yeah, I think it's something, it is important to keep in mind the sensitivities, and I could see why some people, who are involved with the report, I could see why people in the Justice Department might be hesitant to release everything word for word, and I think reasonable people get that. But there is an opportunity for them to actually share that report in a confidential setting with members of Congress. They get confidential and top secret briefings all the time where they could actually see things word for word. And that's one of the reasons why we have elected representatives in Washington, to be our eyes and ears as well as our representatives.
If you think about it, not much was leaked about this report yet, outside of the fact that there were no additional indictments. What did you think of that?
About the fact that there's no leak? I mean,
that was the only leak that I know of, that there were no additional indictments in it.
Yeah, and I think that was actually something that they announced. It's hard to know what to make of it because, again, we don't know what's in the report. I think a lot of people think that Democrats are out there hoping, that this president would be found guilty of something or indicted for something. I personally am in the opposite place. I think for the good of our nation, I don't want this president to be guilty of anything. I think you and I have talked about that before.
Indeed.
I don't want the guy sitting in the Oval Office to have been found cooperating with a foreign adversary. I don't want that. But if it happened, I want to make sure that the people involved are held responsible.
Now they're moving on to what's happening in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, in separate attorneys' offices in Brooklyn and Washington, D.C., and the Eastern District of Virginia, and all these other investigations, including everything from the Trump Charity Foundation to Trump businesses and business dealings dating back decades. This seems like it could easily get out of control and linger for years.
Well, I think that's because we've got a president who's been involved in a lot of things. I think he does have a very passing relationship with the truth.
But that was not the original. It would not be the first time something like this has veered off course to the point of investigating everything else under the sun. But do Democrats worry this boomerangs on them? They look a little too zealous?
I think everybody's got to watch out and make sure that they don't overreach on this. And I think it is an important point that you make, Neil, that this wasn't part of the original investigation. This wasn't what it was supposed to be all about. But at the same time, if crimes are found, then those people should be held accountable, and we're seeing that happen.
All right. Thank you, John, very, very much. John Summers used to work with Harry Reid. Well, forget Mueller. What if I told you the big worry for the president could be the markets? All right, this might be kind of obvious, but we're just learning right now that the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, will be at the Department of Justice today, completely reading the Mueller report. We are told that it's comprehensive. Some people interpret that to be voluminous, or a whole lot of pages to it. The record set back in 1998 for such reports, Ken Starr's on Bill Clinton, that was 445 pages. Many are saying it's a safe bet this has more pages to it. I don't know if that means anything. I would always add pages to a term paper thinking that in volume I'd make up for the lack of substance, but didn't always work with professors. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and you're watching Cavuto Live. So again, it could be as early as tonight we get some details on this or what's in this report. We'll be focusing on that. There are other issues, though, for the president. Even if he's not worried about Mueller anymore, if that is indeed the case, should he be worried about the markets? Should he be worried about a big sell-off yesterday that was precipitated by concerns for a slowdown and something called an inverted yield curve? This is where I'm chasing viewers away explaining this. But it's important enough to note that it hasn't happened since 2007, where the yield you get on a 3-month Treasury bill was higher than a 10-year Treasury note. And that, when it does happen, usually leads to a recession. In fact, all the recessions we've been through, certainly post the 70s, have had this classic precipitant. So, what to make to that with Market Watcher's Kevin Kelly? We got Heather Herzog and Fox Business's Susan Lee. Heather, they say that's a worry. What do you say?
I think we've been hearing whispers of the R word, the recession happening. I mean, we've been hearing about this for the last 18 months. With this inverted yield curve, sure, it might be an indication that this is around the corner. But, for the most part, the markets have been sort of bulletproof. And I don't know if this is necessarily an indication of recession happening in the near future. I mean, markets ebb and flow. We're going to see a recession at some point.
Yeah, we haven't outlawed that. And when I think when firms come out and say, very high odds we're going to have a recession in the next couple of years. Well, yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Right. I mean, is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. But
how about the day after tomorrow?
Maybe the day after tomorrow.
So, Kevin, we were talking during the break about some people say, well, you got to be aware how long we're in this inverted phase or whatever. What's the truth here?
Yeah, the truth is we actually don't know what the inversion of the yield curve means now post 2009. I mean, think about how the Federal Reserve has come out and done Operation Twist and has done quantitative easing programs where they've manipulated interest rates, right? So we've never been in this environment before.
Well, we do know that interest rates, period, are very, very low. In other words, that's the market betting on a slowdown.
No, that's showing worry. That's showing a lot of worry in the conservative, bond market, right? Where if you're willing to take higher yields shorter term than longer, you're not getting compensated for that. And we know we're long in the tooth in this economic cycle, right? It's been the longest recovery we've ever had. So what I'm most worried about is actually what the Fed does, right? And I think that's where everyone's kind of been. The reason why the market's up this year is because the Fed completely capitulated from when they raised in December to then coming out and saying, hey, listen, it was probably a mistake. We're not going to raise anymore. I mean, that's why you've seen the markets come up. And if the markets start to sell off and we start to see the economy slow, that rate of change can be drastic, right?
It's not the first time that the yield curve is inverted. 3 to 5, those 3-year Treasury notes in the 5 years did the same thing in December. How did it react? Okay, it wasn't a great December, but we've bounced up 20% in the first few months of this year. I think the concern might be it's been too good of a year. There might be some profit taking that we saw on Friday.
An excuse to sell,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
But could I ask you guys something? I mean, the Mueller stuff is a wild card, I grant you. But if, and it's way too early to say this, but if when they say no more indictments, and this certainly doesn't expand via what some had thought, would that be a positive for the markets, whether they're right or left, Republican or Democrat, that it certainly doesn't head toward a constitutional crisis? What do you think?
It seems like we're heading in that direction. We've seen information that has come out that has been on par with or not worse than what we are expected to hear. And to be quite honest, I mean, let's think about it. This Mueller report came out on Friday at 5 p.m.
Right.
If there was going to be a perp walk of the president, it would have come out on Monday at 9 a.m. There are no more indictments.
I disagree because you want to do this after market hours so it doesn't cause a huge disturbance. I mean,
if there's a
perp, can you imagine the sell-off that would take place?
Let's say it comes to that extent on Monday morning, then what do you envision?
Well, then there would be panic selling. That's what I envision. Markets would be down.
If this was damning.
Yeah, if this was damning. But I think
there's no damning information in this.
That's why I think it's market positive because you're not going to be dragged through the courts for the next 2 to 3 years. And
there are other investigations going on.
Well, we know that, and we've also seen actually there's been drips and drabs and leaks of the Mueller report over the past few years, and every time the market reaction has been more and more muted. And so what I mean by that is we would be down a couple hundred points and then it'd rebound an hour later. And I think the markets are more focused on trading, tariffs.
So we should explain. This isn't a right or left argument. Yeah. Markets generally abhor uncertainty. They abhor the uncertainty around the Clinton impeachment process because they didn't know where it would end. We were going through good market times then. They don't like that disrupted. Say Friday, we were enjoying good market times. So anything that hints that we're avoiding that would be welcome, right?
Yeah, it would be welcome. And we already know that almost half the people think that this was a witch hunt, right? I mean, we've seen through polls, right? So if you think about the general populace and then you've seen market movements from leaks, I mean, I think the market is really not concerned about the Mueller report.
Is the market concerned about investigations that will ensue,
overhang,
hearings that will continue?
Yeah,
I mean, there's this 3 p.m. conference call today.
The markets are concerned with if the Democrats are going to overtake the House. I mean, right now, all Republicans are leaning towards the president, and the president has been able to keep this economy going. So if the Democrats, it's a focus on 2020 at this point, unless the Democrats put a lot of pressure on New York State as these investigations happen with the president. That's the only way that the markets are going to be affected by this.
All right. We shall see. Guys, thank you very, very much. We don't know. We do know about this 3 p.m. conference call among top Democrats as to what to do now. That is assuming they get any more details than they know already. We know in that Justice Department building, Bill Barr is going through all of this right now, page by page. And we're told it's voluminous. So that means there could be a lot of pages after this. All right, tale of two worlds right now on the left of the Justice Department, where we're told the Attorney General, Bill Barr, is combing through that Bob Mueller report that so far we have learned has not called for any additional indictments. On the right of your screen of the Capitol, where we're told at 3 p.m. today there'll be a conference call by all the affected Democratic committee chairs to decide on what the next step should be. It's hard to know the next step if you don't have the report. Many leading Democrats have said they do want that report. They want it out there and completely released without any redactions, and the sooner the better. Let's go to former Clinton advisor Mark Penn on all of that. Mark, Democrats have a delicate dance on this, don't they? I mean, they can't appear to be too zealous. So what's your sense of how they're handling it thus far?
Well, I think that's right. I think that the more nonpartisan they can appear, the better. I'm a little surprised they'd hold a one-party conference call before the report is even out. I think that kind of looks partisan, and I think you want to avoid that. You want to be waiting for the report to come out. You want to react to the findings, and then you want to ask for more information if there are some findings that you want to pursue. And I think that's very important. It gives a bad impression if everyone is just looking at this report as yet another partisan document.
So with Adam Schiff is calling for subpoenaing documents and individuals and principals, all the way to Bob Mueller, I mean, is he overreaching here or what?
Well, I mean, if I were him, I would have held my fire until I saw what was in it and what the summary was, because he's giving the impression and that he's going to pursue another investigation no matter what. And if there's one thing that we kind of know here, if there are no collusion-related indictments, which there haven't been, there couldn't possibly be collusion unless it was telepathic. And so they know that finding is coming out. There may be other findings that Democrats find as helpful related to Comey and whether or not there was some attempt at all to obstruct anything. We don't know that. We're waiting for that. I don't think that they look good at all doing what they're doing now, as opposed to appearing to wait for the findings.
It's always politics, and I understand that, and you've told me that over the years. I can remember a great concern on the part of Democrats about releasing the Ken Starr report back in 1998, that it was a bad idea. Now, of course, in this situation, different investigation, release the whole thing. But there are legal and logical reasons, to say nothing of national security reasons, for at least omitting or redacting certain names and individuals who precipitated this investigation. So just to do that could take a little bit of time, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, look, I opposed what Ken Starr did, back in '98, and I was glad to hear him say that he didn't want his report released because it shouldn't have been released with all of the graphic, detail that was included in that report. And here, everyone knows when they say, "Oh, I want everything. I want the report." They know that's a popular soundbite, but they know what the department regulations are, and they know that innocent people, who are not indicted, who may have been investigated, shouldn't be compromised if the decision was not to in fact indict them or didn't find anything. They know that violates basic rights of the grand jury. They know all this when they say these statements. So they should say, Attorney General Barr should follow those regulations. We ought to get everything that we're entitled to get to see what happened here.
Mark, I was switching around watching a lot of coverage on this, and depending on the venue, you could hear what was traditionally talking about it. It's almost like they've moved past Mueller to talk about other investigations that are going on in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, other federal prosecutors throughout the country, the Eastern District of Virginia, and Washington, D.C., what have you, exploring everything from the Trump Charity Foundation to Trump business dealings dating back decades. So I can envision certainly more House-related committee hearings from Judiciary et al. Is that a danger to Democrats, over-investigating, over-meeting? What do you think?
Well, I can only give you the experience back in '98. When it was over, it was over. No one wanted to talk about it again. Everybody talked about Monica Lewinsky for an entire year. Everyone has now talked about Russia collusion for 2 years. I think there's Russia collusion exhaustion.
But I think it's veered from the collusion issue. To your point, this does not address collusion because it didn't find evidence to that. If that is indeed the case, that no one has been charged directly with conspiring Russia to rig an election, which was the initial intent. If it's veered now with these other investigations into business dealings and the like, how are Americans going to respond to that?
Well, look, I think that Americans are really give two responses. Number one, if you say, should we investigate X, they always say yes. But 60% have said these investigations have been hurting the country. So I think Democrats have to think long and hard. Do they want to talk about health care, the issue on which they won the midterms? Or do they want to talk about investigations and charitable foundations and fundraising stuff if this didn't go anywhere? Now let's see the report. Let's get the conclusions and make a decision. But yeah, there's a real danger of overreaching here. You're exactly right.
Mark Penn, always good having you, my friend. Thank you very, very much. Mark Penn, on all these developments, we can confirm, by the way, at the Justice Department that the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, is in fact going through this report. We're told it's comprehensive. Some take that to mean voluminous. Some take that to mean a whole lot of pages. I don't know if the Attorney General is a speed reader, but he's already promised that at least highlights would get out this weekend. He is providing those highlights, presumably, based on what he's read. So he's reading, and we're still broadcasting. More to this. All right, a little earlier today, President Trump arriving at his Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. We do know that the president was alerted to the no additional indictment thing and that people around him said he was happy about it. We don't know much more than that. We're keeping track of it. But again, whatever happens, excuse me, with the Mueller probe, we're not done. There's something going on in the Southern District of New York. Jackie Heinrich is on top of that. Hey, Jackie.
Hey there, Neil. Yeah, the reality is, even if the Mueller report doesn't recommend any more indictments, the investigations out of the Southern District of New York and elsewhere are not limited to Russian collusion or interference with the 2016 election. And right now, there are at least 6 entities linked to the president under investigation. They are Trump's inaugural committee and potential corruption involving favors for donors, Trump's taxes, and the allegations that he benefited from a $4 million tax scheme involving Deutsche Bank, the Trump Organization, the Trump Foundation, Michael Cohen, his former fixer, and hush money payments made to adult actresses, Paul Manafort, and possible mortgage fraud, whether Manafort, as campaign chairman, illegally coordinated with a pro-Trump super PAC and received donations connected to Middle Eastern countries, and also allegations of sexual assault from Summer Zervos, former contestant on The Apprentice. In an interview with Maria Bartiromo yesterday morning, the president seemed unconcerned.
I said to my lawyers, are we being looked at here? They don't even know what people are talking about. How many breaking news stories was there about me that turned out to be non-existent?
Many of these investigations grew out of an April raid of Michael Cohen's office and residence. The probe into the Trump inauguration is one of them.
The Southern District of New York, in its indictment of Michael Cohen, has already named President Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator, individual number 1. He is a criminal in their eyes. He participated in that conspiracy. Members of his family may as well. There's almost no aspect of Trump world not under investigation right now.
There still is a lot that remains to be seen about how the president is coordinating with his legal defenses over these probes. Neil.
All right, Jackie, thank you very, very much. In the meantime, Bob Mueller might think his work is done, but when it comes to Beto O'Rourke, he just said something minutes ago that is stunning. That it might not even be in the Mueller report at all. Welcome to Politics 2020. After this.
Offshore drilling here in this state, outside of this community. doing everything in his power to close the Charleston loophole, to ensure those who should not have weapons in their hands do not receive them, saving lives in the process.
All right. Well, that was not the particular soundbite we wanted here, but earlier that was Beto O'Rourke. He's in South Carolina. It's a political event, but he had mentioned of the Mueller report that no matter the details, the gist is the president conspired with Russia to rig the 2016 election. Do we have that now, Mike? Okay, so look at this. This is what he said.
Offshore drilling here.
Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to show, guys. I apologize for that. But he did say that. Trust me on this. Now, many will leap on that, even though there might not be anything in the report to verify that. After all, we did not see additional indictments come out of the Bob Mueller probe. That doesn't mean that there might not be other surprises in there. But this idea that the administration worked closely with the Russians to rig the election in Donald Trump's favor, that has not come through just yet. Even in the indictments and arrests that we've already had, a lot of lying going on, a lot of misrepresenting of the meetings going on, but whether a direct administration or then top Trump official involvement in trying to alter the 2016 election, that has not come out. So let's get the read from Noel Nickbor. We have Catalina Magazine publisher Kathy Abreu and Deneen Borelli. Deneen, way too early to tell. We do know the Attorney General is going through this page by page, obviously a lot of pages. If it's that, then Beto O'Rourke took a leap.
Well, listen, I would say the whole thing should be released for the public to review.
Right.
The media we have been inundated with Russia collusion for over 2 years now. So let's get to the facts. Let's see what has been resolved in this report. But when you also look at how Democrats are not going to let this go, the news headlines that I've been seeing since yesterday when the report came out, other investigations, there's got to be something else there. They're not going to let this go. So we really need to see what the details are to really expose the left, and that it's all about control and power, and that they're trying to direct their narrative with this when in fact there is no proof.
All right, Mark Penn was here a little while ago, a big advisor to the Clintons, who said that the Democrats risk overdoing this. What do you think, Kathy?
Well, yeah, there is a risk. I mean, one of my sources said if you're going to attack the king, make sure you kill him. So, because the wrath is going to be awful. So, is this report going to kill the king?
And that's just sort of like a pejorative. It's not
exactly.
actual.
It's not, right. So, yeah, no. I would just say, like, if you're going to attack, if you're going to attack this guy, and make sure that you have.
So, do you think by constantly pounding, even the other investigations, which are legitimate, they are going on.
Absolutely, but this one might not be the one that actually kills the king. This might not be the one that actually is the weapon that's going to bring him down.
Yeah,
so they may not. Right, but they may not. They might have to step back a little bit because it seems like this is not the report. This is not the investigation that's going to do it. It's not going to.
Well, they always were pointing out. Again, I was flipping around and hearing the justice. Look, the 37 indictments or guilty pleas spanning 2 years. Some key members of the president's team early on going off to prison. That's something. Yep. What do you think?
Well, there are two narratives, I think, that are consistent within the Democrats right now. And first of all is that they don't recognize the election, that they really think that Hillary Clinton won and there's something wrong. The second is he's guilty. I don't care what the Mueller report says, but they're going to look for anything that's negative and they're going to go with that as their headline.
Anything that's negative. In other words, we've moved beyond potentially collusion to the Trump Charitable Foundation.
Oh, they're going to look at New York.
Anything and everything, right?
And don't forget, the House Democrats have investigations going on with, 81 people that are remotely associated with President Trump?
But even Nancy Pelosi was warning, go slow, be careful. So I had Steny Hoyer here not too long ago.
No one's listening to Nancy Pelosi these days.
Yeah, right?
She's lost full control of the House.
Do you worry, though, that they're grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory for 2020, but not letting go?
This report, perhaps they should let go, but we knew that they were going to launch investigations after investigations. Before they had the House, that was the whole point. We said it on the show, what's going to happen if they get House investigations?
No, that's true. That's happening. But when I hear all the presidential candidates, Beto was just among them, saying that, this was a bought and paid for Russia-coordinated Trump deal, That's just a false narrative, and that's a risky story to pursue, isn't it?
Right. Exactly. So they now want to look at Southern District of New York.
I understand, but they're going to overplay. Republicans overplayed it in '98.
Well, but the thing of it is, with with Beto rallying his base and rallying the crowd, they want to hear things that may not even be true, just to rally that base. Anti-Trump, because a lot of these Democrat hopefuls are hoping that any kind of negative spin on Trump, a vote of anger is going to be a vote for them.
Beto, guy who ate dirt, right?
Did he really eat it? I heard that. I just thought, how do you eat dirt?
Go figure.
Right? Why do you eat dirt?
You want to listen to this guy.
I mean, you mix it with water to make it go down better? Or
no. Can't help you there.
No, okay. Guys, thank you very, very much. Again, this is taking to the Justice Department where things are going on right now. The Attorney General is going through this report. We do know of this 3 p.m. Meeting among prominent Democrats, all the key committee chairmen involved to sort of assess what they do. They might be planning that ahead of the report's formal release. That has not happened, and they want it released, and the sooner the better. So the back and forth on this continues. We'll have more to this.